Today, we're diving into a story that has two sides, two starkly different realities that collide in the most dramatic way you can imagine. On one hand, you've got this moment of incredible public triumph, and on the other, a private terror. And believe it or not, it all starts with this book. But what looks like this quiet, really thoughtful work of art is actually at the center of a story that pulls in celebrities, a really mysterious disappearance, and a crisis that's just engulfing an entire region. So let's get into how these worlds crash into each other. Okay, so our story kicks off right in the heart of New York City, and the scene is just pure celebration. This is about a family's dream, something that was years and years in the making, finally coming true.
Yeah, take a look. This People magazine article, it captures this moment of absolute triumph. You've got Today's Show host Savannah Guthrie celebrating her sister, Annie, at the launch party for her poetry collection, The Good Dark. And this was a huge deal, a project 15 years in the making. You can just feel the energy, right? A true career milestone.
And this was no small get-together. I mean, we're talking an A-list crowd. John Bon Jovi was there, fellow news anchors, even the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations. It was a huge signal of just how big of a moment this was for the Guthrie family. Savannah's quote to People really just paints the perfect picture, doesn't it? A happy, supportive, little Brady Bunch family. It's this image of wholesome, all-American success. But here's the thing. While this party was in full swing, a completely different, much darker story was unfolding. And this is where the story takes a sharp, dark turn. We're going to pivot from the glittering lights of New York City to the quiet darkness of a suburban home in Arizona. Because behind all the smiles and champagne toasts, a total nightmare had already begun. This is the image at the very heart of the mystery. It was captured by a Nest security camera, and it shows a masked person at the Tucson area home of Nancy Guthrie, the 84-year-old matriarch of the family. She was believed to have been taken from her own home. So you can see from this timeline just how fast everything escalated. February 1st, Nancy disappears. Just over 2 weeks later, the sheriff has to go public to clear the grieving family of any involvement. Can you imagine? Then, a week later, they post a staggering $1 million reward for information. The contrast between this and that glittering book party, it's just completely jarring. You know, what the sheriff said here is so revealing. He doesn't just confirm that the family are victims, he's practically begging the media for compassion. And that tells you everything you need to know about the immense public pressure and suspicion they were under, all while dealing with this private horror. And this is where the story gets even bigger. Because the Guthrie family's tragedy, it wasn't some isolated incident. No, it turned out to be a horribly public example of a crisis that has been boiling just across the border for years. So let's just look at the hard data for a second. According to security analysts, kidnappings in Mexico shot up 16% year on year. That is a staggering jump, and it points to a security situation that is deteriorating, and fast. You know, a number like 16% can feel kind of abstract. But then you read this quote from Latavia McGee. She's an American who survived a cartel kidnapping that actually killed 2 of her friends. And her words just make it brutally real. That is the human cost behind that statistic. And it's not always these long-term, high-ransom situations you see in movies. A really common and terrifying tactic is something called express kidnapping. It's fast, it's violent, and it's all about getting quick cash, which, makes almost anyone a potential target. And the methods they use are both brazen and weirdly sophisticated. We're talking criminals posing as police on highways, hiding armed men in the trunks of airport taxis, or even using personal connections to lure people right into an ambush. It is a calculated and absolutely ruthless business. So, what's driving this explosion in violence? What's going on here? Well, to understand that, we have to go inside the brutal and really complex world of Mexico's cartel wars.
So for a long time, the Sinaloa cartel was the top dog, right? The dominant force. But after its leader, El Mayo Zambada, was arrested, the whole organization just splintered into these warring factions. And that created a massive power vacuum. And rivals, like the super-violent CJNG, have moved in, sparking an all-out war for control.
And let's be crystal clear about the business model here. According to a U.S. Department of Justice indictment, the purpose is simple: smuggle tons of drugs and launder the money. And the methods they use to achieve that? Kidnapping, torture, and murder. It's really that simple, and that brutal.
And look, this isn't just me saying this. This quote from a U.S. attorney, it's not an exaggeration. He says it right there.
These things are the four corners of their foundation. Violence isn't just a side effect of their business, it's a foundational pillar.
And you can see the direct impact these cartel wars have on everyday safety. It's not just kidnapping that's up 16%, extortion has jumped by 22%. The entire security fabric of the region is just being torn apart.
And here is a really chilling piece of context for you. Security experts are warning that even the official homicide rates are probably misleadingly low. Why? Because to avoid getting counted in the statistics, cartels are now more likely to disappear their victims in mass graves. The reality is actually even worse than the numbers suggest. All of this puts law enforcement in an unbelievably difficult position. I mean, these men and women are on the front lines fighting against these fantastically wealthy, heavily armed, and totally ruthless organizations that are basically fighting for control of the state itself. And the impact is so severe that the U.S. State Department has issued its highest-level warning, do not travel, for multiple Mexican states, and they specifically cite the risks of crime and kidnapping. This isn't some vague warning. It's a direct response to this very real crisis.
The official response has even escalated to the highest levels, with the U.S. government now designating these groups as foreign terrorist organizations. And that has huge legal implications, creating massive risks for any international companies that might accidentally do business with any cartel-linked entities.
Which brings us all the way back to where we started, with a book called The Good Dark. The story of the Guthrie family really shows how a deeply personal tragedy can suddenly get tangled up in a massive geopolitical crisis. And it leaves us with a really difficult question. When you're faced with such darkness, both on a personal level and a systemic one, where do you even begin to look for the good?